Manthri.
Yes, ma'am.
Om Hari Om. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Mavidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. And so we are studying chapter 6 of Swami Vivekananda's Jnana Yoga, the Absolute and Manifestation. And we're to this point where he says, Brahman is the witness, the eternal witness of all knowledge. Whatever we know, we have to know in and through him. He is the essence of our own self. I'm going to repeat that. Brahman is the witness, the eternal witness of all knowledge. Whatever we know, we have to know in and through him. He is the essence of our own self. He is the essence of this ego, this I, and we cannot know anything excepting in and through that I. Therefore, you have to know everything in and through the Brahman. What he's saying is there is only one I. We have to know everything in and through that one I. He is the essence of this ego. What does it mean, essence? It is the truth. This ego is nothing other than Brahman, but we have this misapprehension of that. He's trying to correct the misapprehension. Brahman is the essence of this ego, this I, and we cannot know anything except in and through that I. The small self I is a distorted and fragmented reflection of our true I, the essence I. Therefore, you have to know everything in and through the Brahman. To know the chair, you have to know it in and through God. Thus, God is infinite. Thus, God is infinitely nearer to us. It's this. I can't read this or thus. In any event, God is infinitely nearer to us than the chair, but yet he is infinitely higher. What does he mean higher? There is this nearness, but then there is this consciousness in which we are embedded. That is the higher consciousness. When we transcend the lower consciousness, we go to the higher consciousness. It isn't a physical dimension. It's a transcendent dimension. we are embedded in that higher consciousness. God is infinitely nearer to us than the chair, but yet he is infinitely higher. Neither known nor unknown, but something infinitely higher than either. Known or unknown are what? Part of duality, part of time, space, and causation. That which is, of which our true self is the essence, is something infinitely higher than either. He is yourself. Who would live a second? Who would breathe a second in this universe if that blessed one were not filling it? That's a quote from one of the Upanishads. I don't know which one. Who would live a second? Who would breathe a second in that universe if that blessed one were not filling it? It sounds like the Svetasvatara. Because in and through him we breathe, in and through him we exist. Who would live a second? Who would breathe a second in this universe if that blessed one were not filling it? Because in and through him we breathe, in and through him we exist. Not that, it's a misprint here. Not that he is standing somewhere and making my blood circulate. What is meant is that he is the essence of all this, the soul of my soul. You cannot by any possibility say you know him. It would be degrading him. You cannot get out of yourself, so you cannot know him. Knowledge is objectification. For instance, in the memory, you are objectifying many things, projecting them out of yourself. All the memory, all the things which I have seen and which I know are in my mind. The pictures, the impressions of all these things are in my mind. And when I would try to think of them, to know them, the first act of knowledge would be to project them outside. This cannot be done with God because he is the essence of our souls. We cannot project him outside ourselves. This cannot be done with God because he is the essence of our souls. We cannot project him outside ourselves. And that, of course, is the reason for what is called image worship. We want to project. We want to have some sense of this divine presence outside of ourselves. And so we have the worship of images. He is the essence of our souls. We cannot project him outside ourselves. Here is one of the profoundest passages in Vedanta. He that is the essence of your soul, he is the truth. He is the self. Thou art that, O Shvetaketu. That's from the Chandogya. Here is one of the profoundest passages in Vedanta. He that is the essence of your soul, he that is the truth, he is the self. Thou art that, O Shvetaketu. This is what is meant by thou art God. You cannot describe him by any other language. All attempts of language, calling him father or brother or dearest friends, are attempts to objectify God, which cannot be done. He is the eternal subject of everything. I'm sure this has raised some questions and some thoughts in your mind. So please let us have the benefit of your thoughts. Let us have the benefit of your questions.
Brother Shankara, I have a question here.
Yes, Haima, thank you.
It's Swami says we cannot project him outside ourselves. I thought God is inside us, within us, and outside and everywhere. He's the universe. He's the universe. He's everything, isn't he?
Yes, but that doesn't mean that we are projecting him outside of ourselves.
I see. Okay.
This is what I meant by the tendency. This is what the Swami said about why Buddhism failed in India. Buddhism failed in India because it, at least at the time that it failed, it did not include image worship. The desire to worship something that we can see, interact with, that is why he said Buddhism didn't. There was no Mahayana Buddhism in that time.
Yes.
So it was only the Hinayana form, and so there was no image worship. It was forbidden. Not forbidden, but just not done. So the tendency of the human heart to want to be in relationship with something it can see and interact with, offer a flower to, he said, was the reason that the traditional forms of Indian spirituality overwhelmed Buddhism in India. So God is definitely inside, outside, everywhere. As a matter of fact, our whole ideas of inside and outside are just a learned response to the vibration around us. But it isn't as if we're projecting the God outside of us. We may learn to know that God in the sense of experience it, but not know it in the intellectual sense.
Thank you, Brother Shankara. Thank you so much.
Anything else from anyone? As so often is the case, the Swami kind of leaves us speechless. He does me when I read these things. So to go on, he, Brahman, is the eternal subject, capital S, subject, object. There's only one subject. Everything else is objective, objects, objectified. Brahman is the eternal subject of everything. I am the subject of this chair. I see the chair. So God is the eternal subject of my soul. I see that God, but only in my soul. Then having seen the God in the soul, as the Swami will tell us, then we see it everywhere. I am the subject of this chair. I see the chair. So God is the eternal subject of my soul. How can you objectify him, the essence of your souls, the reality of everything? Thus, I would repeat to you once more, God is neither knowable nor unknowable, not within duality, in other words. God is neither knowable nor unknowable, but something infinitely higher than either. He is one with us, and that which is one with us is neither knowable nor unknowable as your own self, lowercase self. In other words, knowing in the way we ordinarily know things. You cannot know your own self. You cannot move it out and make it an object to look at, because you are that and cannot separate yourself from it. Neither is it unknowable, for what is better known than yourself? It is really the center of our knowledge. In exactly the same sense, God is neither unknowable nor known, but infinitely higher than both, for he is our real self. First, we see then that the question, what caused the absolute, is a contradiction in terms. What caused the absolute is a contradiction in terms. There is no cause of the absolute. So we see then that the question, what caused the absolute, is a contradiction in terms. And secondly, we find that the idea of God and the Advaita is this oneness, and that therefore we cannot objectify him, for we are always living and moving in him, whether we know it or not. Whatever we do is always through him. Now the question is, what are time, space, and causation? Advaita means non-duality. There are no two, but one. Yet we see that here is a proposition that the absolute is manifesting itself as many through the veil of time, space, and causation. Therefore, it seems that there are two, the absolute and the sum total of time, space, and causation. Maya, I guess that is. And the absolute and Maya, the sum total of time, space, and causation. It seems apparently very convincing there are two. To this, the Advaitist replies that it cannot be called two. To have two, we must have two absolute independent existences which cannot be caused. In the first place, time, space, and causation cannot be said to be independent existences. Time is entirely a dependent existence. It changes with every change of our mind. Sometimes in dream, one imagines that one has lived several years. At other times, several months were passed as 1 second. So time is entirely dependent on our state of mind. Second, the idea of time vanishes altogether sometimes. So with space. We cannot know what space is, yet it is there, indefinable, and we cannot exist separate from anything else. So with causation, the one peculiar attribute we find in time, space, and causation is that they cannot exist separate from other things. Try to think of space without color or limits or any connection with the things around. Just abstract space. You cannot. You have to think of it as the space between two limits or between three objects. It has to be connected with some object to have any existence. So with time, you cannot have any idea of abstract time, but you have to take two events, one preceding and the other succeeding, and join the two events with the idea of succession. Time depends on two events, just as space has to be related to outside objects. And the idea of causation is inseparable from time and space. This is the peculiar thing about them, that they have no independent existence. They have not even the existence which the chair or the wall has. They are as shadows around everything which you cannot catch. They have no real existence, yet they are not non-existence, seeing that through them all things are manifesting as the universe. Thus, we see first that the combination of time, space, and causation has neither existence nor non-existence. Secondly, it sometimes vanishes. To give an illustration, there is a wave on the ocean. The wave is the same as the ocean, certainly, and yet we know it as a wave, and as such different from the ocean. What makes this difference? The name and form, that is, the idea in the mind and the form. Now, can we think of a wave form as something separate from the ocean? Certainly not. Let's just go over that again. The wave is the same as the ocean, certainly, and yet we know it as a wave, and as such, different from the ocean. What makes this difference? The name and the form, that is, the idea in the mind, the name and the form, the wave we see. Now, can we think of a waveform as something separate from the ocean? Certainly not. We have to think of ocean if we think of the wave. We can imagine a wave separated from the ocean, but we have to think of the ocean before we can imagine the wave. So we're not really thinking of it as separate. We're just creating an image picture in our mind. The wave is always associated with the ocean idea. If the wave subsides, the form vanishes in a moment, and yet the form was not a delusion. So long as the wave existed, the form was there, and you were bound to see the form. This is Maya. The whole of this universe, therefore, is, as it were, a peculiar form. By peculiar, he means distinct, or it doesn't mean peculiar in the sense of strange. That's it. We've come to use peculiar in that way. Therefore, the whole of this universe is therefore, as it were, a peculiar, a particular, a specific form. The absolute is that ocean, which you and I and suns and stars and everything are various. Wait a minute. The absolute is that ocean, while you and I and suns and stars and everything else are various waves of that ocean. And what makes the waves different? Only the form. And that form is the time, space, and causation, all independent on the wave. As soon as the wave goes, they vanish. Now let's ponder that a moment. What makes the waves different? Only the form. And that form is the time the wave arises, subsides, time, space, There's this wave, that wave in the ocean. And causation, what causes the wave? The wind, the movement of the earth, something causes a wave. All entirely dependent on the wave. Are we clear as why it's dependent on the wave? As soon as the wave disappears, goes, all of that business of time, space, and causation is no longer necessary. It vanishes. And so the Swami concludes, as soon as the individual gives up this Maya, it vanishes for him and he becomes free. So once again, I'm going to pause and see if there's anything. The Swami has just been coming at us hammer and tongs with this idea of what is and what isn't, what the true nature of reality is, what the seeming but not delusionary aspects of reality are. Anything that is left as a question or any comments you'd like to make from your own experience about what's been said.
Brother Shankara, this is Katrina Collins.
Yes,
What does he mean by giving up the Maya? Because it's all God in form. So the wave is a Maya, right? The wave is Maya.
The way we give up Maya is to still the activities of the mind. When we still the activities of the mind, when we quiet the mind, then all these differentiations, all these aspects of name and form subside.
Okay.
We sink into silence. Within the silence, there is no time and space, or causation. There is no Maya. This is what is meant by meditation. We first contemplate something, then having gotten sufficiently interested in it through contemplation, we concentrate on it. As we concentrate on it, we eliminate in our awareness all other thoughts. We're just focused on that one thought, that one idea. Slowly and slowly, as our concentration develops, and we are able to exceed 2 minutes of focus on one idea or one vibration form in the form of a mantra or one image, an image that we're either gazing on or have formed in our minds, and that's the only thing that is existing for us. What happens is we slip into a different state in which the activities of the mind quiet. We, so to speak, sink beneath them. And there is a greater and greater silence, that is, fewer and fewer thoughts. This physically manifests by less and less breathing until spontaneously your breathing actually stops, because breathing and thinking are energetically connected. And you're in that silence. Now you can come to this by prayer, by focusing on the prayer. The prayer becomes the object of your contemplation first, then concentration, then slip into it, meditation. This is the way of the various forms of Catholic prayer, and was very much taught by Thomas Keating as centering prayer, and Father Richard Rohr is now teaching it and coming to incredible conclusions about the universality of truth. He has a new book about that. But to return to the idea of your question, Maya disappears for us when we stop interacting with it. And we do that internally through contemplation, concentration, and then we slip into meditation. Anything left unanswered?
No, that was great. Thank you.
You bet. Anything else?
Brother Shankara?
Yes, Swayam.
What is the role of grace in reaching that stillness of the mind? I was listening to a talk today on the Fourfold Truth by Swami Sarvapriyananda. And if I heard him correctly, in Buddhism, there is only self-effort. Obviously, I don't know if I understood that correctly, but we obviously, have faith in that grace. So can you clarify a little bit about grace in all of this?
Okay, let's just start with the ideas of Buddhism. Buddhism is a very sophisticated form of karma yoga. As a matter of fact, Vivekananda says that Buddha was the greatest karma yogi. So the emphasis appears to be on self-effort. But what happens is if you continue to make this effort over time, your sense of who you are and what you're doing changes. And as that happens, you access because your idea of yourself changes, you access a different aspect of your being, which was always there. And it's as Sri Ramakrishna says, that aspect of yourself, which we call grace or mercy, is always there. Sri Ramakrishna says, the breeze of grace is always blowing. You have but to raise your sails. Raise your sails is self-effort. Nobody else is going to raise your sails for you. If you're hungry, if someone else eats it, you won't be fed. You have to take the knowledge, assimilate it, digest it, and this is what happens through the Buddhist practices or the practices that are taught here, which are different. They're bhakti and other practices. So as your sense of self changes from that which offers to an understanding that you are both that which offers and that which is being offered to, And finally, you conclude that the more important aspect of those two is that which is offered to. And your identification increasingly comes to be with that. Then this sense of grace, of your being impelled by the breeze of grace, like a boat, the wind in its sails. You begin to feel that you're being carried along by the divine, by the presence. In Buddhism, the Buddha simply wanted to do away with the excessive sentimentalism and priestcraft of the time in which he began to teach. And so he emphasized what is essentially, as Vivekananda pointed out, karma yoga, the yoga of action, self-effort. But a Buddhist comes to the point where they're offering themselves and everything, every bit of the merit of their practice. I just had breakfast with a wonderful practicing Buddhist this morning. And he was talking about offering the merits of the practice to universe, he went through the sequence. First you offer it to others that you know and love and care about. Then you begin to offer it to, oh, well, I don't need to go through all of this. I'm just rehearsing what happened at breakfast this morning. But in any event, the Buddhist ultimately offers their practice and the merit of that practice to the benefit of universe itself, of all manifestation. And thereby, slowly and slowly, manifestation ceases to be in the sense that we ordinarily experience it.
Thank you so much, Brother Shankara.
And if there's something that you think you didn't understand about Sarvapriyananda's talk, it would be worth your time, since you have time right now during your recovery, to just go back and listen to it again. Because he's well.
Yes, Brother Shankara. Yeah. It's actually part of the next series that Vedanta Life Academy is doing.
Yeah,
it was a homework.
All that. They archive all that. So it's available to you. If you
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
Anything else from anyone? How are we doing for time? Oh, good. Still early. Anything else from anyone? Okay, so I'll repeat. As soon as the individual gives up this Maya, it vanishes for him, and he becomes free. The whole struggle is to get rid of this clinging to time, space, and causation, which are always obstacles in our way. What is the theory of evolution? What are the two factors? A tremendous potential power which is trying to express itself, and circumstances which are holding it down, the environment's not allowing it to express itself. So in order to fight with the environments, the power is taking new bodies again and again. Now, listen to this about evolution. You were this amoeba. So in order to fight with these environments that are holding it down, this power that is trying to express itself is taking new bodies again and again. An amoeba in this struggle gets another body and conquers some obstacles. What he's talking about is the first one-celled creatures, amoeba, had no ability to move. They simply were. And they reproduced by mitosis, division. Well, that mitosis thing continued, but because there was a desire for greater freedom, these one-celled creatures developed something called flagella, which allowed them, they would move the flagella, and the flagella allowed them to move. Now they weren't just helpless totally. They couldn't see yet. Not in the way we think of seeing. But they were in contact with their environment and wanted to be able to move about in that environment. So they developed flagella. And then so on and so on, until this thing we are sitting in is literally trillions of one-celled intelligent creatures cooperating with one another. That's what this Swami means by taking new bodies. In order to fight with these environments that are holding it down, the power is taking new bodies again and again. An amoeba in this struggle gets another body and conquers some obstacles, then gets another body, and so on until it becomes man. Trillions of one-celled creatures cooperating with one another to do this. If it doesn't fill you with awe, then think about it some more. It should actually fill you with great awe and wonder that you exist in this form. It is just absolutely astounding. Takes another body and conquers some obstacles, then gets another body and so on until it becomes man. Now, if you carry this idea to its logical conclusion, there must come a time when that power that was in the amoeba and which evolved as man will have conquered all the obstructions that nature can bring before it and will thus escape from all its environments. This idea expressed in metaphysics will take this form. There are two components in every action, the one the subject, the other the object, and the one aim of life is to make the subject master of the object. For instance, I feel unhappy because a man scolds me. My struggle will be to make myself strong enough to conquer that environment so that he may scold and I shall not be, and I shall not feel. That is how we are all trying to conquer. What is meant by mortality? Making the subject strong by attuning it to the absolute. so that finite nature ceases to have control over us. It is a logical conclusion of our philosophy that there must come a time when we shall have conquered all the environments, because nature is finite. Here is another thing to learn. How do you know that nature is finite? You can only know this through metaphysics. Nature is that infinite under limitations. Therefore, it is finite. So there must come a time when we shall have conquered all environments. And now, how are we to conquer them? We cannot possibly conquer all the objective environments. We cannot. The little fish wants to fly from its enemies in the water. How does it do so? By evolving wings and becoming a bird. The fish did not change the water or the air. The change was in itself. I'm going to repeat that. This is just so precious. I mean, this idea of evolution that the Swami gives us. What is evolution? We cannot possibly conquer all the objective environments. We cannot. The little fish wants to fly from its enemies in the water. How does it do so? By evolving wings and becoming a bird. The fish did not change the water or the air. The change was in itself. Change is always subjective. All through evolution, you find that the conquest of nature comes by change in the subject. Apply this to religion and morality, and you will find that the conquest of evil comes by the change in the subjective alone. That is how the Advaita system gets its whole force, on the subjective side of man. To talk of evil and misery is nonsense because they do not exist outside. If I am immune against all anger, I never feel angry. If I am proof against all hatred, I never feel hatred. This is therefore the process by which to achieve that conquest, through the subjective, by perfecting the subjective. I may make bold to say that the only religion which agrees with and even goes a little further than modern researches, both on physical and moral lines, is the Advaita. And that is why it appeals to modern scientists so much. I think you've heard it said from here that the most advanced quantum physics research facility in the world, the CERN, C-E-R-N facility, which is headquartered in Switzerland, in front of the entrance to that facility is a Shiva Nataraj. Shiva Nataraj is dancing the world, the universe into creation. And he is holding a damru, a drum that creates the vibration. And his dance is shaping that vibration into what we see. These scientists, they know they're dealing with that fundamental vibration that can be characterized and objectified as Shiva. It's a beautiful image, beautiful, big. I can't remember whether it's 9 or 12 feet tall, but it's a big image of Shiva Nataraj, and you walk right past it as you walk into the facility. If you want to know what I'm talking about, watch the film Particle Fever. Particle Fever. That film is about the discovery of the Higgs boson. Particle Fever. So any other comments or questions before we go on? The only religion which agrees with and even goes a little further than modern researches, both on physical and moral lines, is the Advaita, and that is why it appeals to modern scientists so much. They find that the old dualistic theories are not enough for them, do not satisfy their necessities. A man must have not only faith, but intellectual faith too. Now, in this later part of the 19th century, such an idea as that religion coming from now in this later part of the 19th century, such an idea as that religion coming from any other source than one's own hereditary religion must be false, shows that there is still weakness left, and such ideas must be given up. I do not mean that such is the case in this country alone. It is in every country, and nowhere more than in my own. This Advaita was never allowed to come to the people. At first, some monks got a hold of it and took it to the forests, and so it came to be called the forest philosophy. By the mercy of the Lord, the Buddha came and preached it to the masses, and the whole nation became Buddhists. By the mercy of the Lord, this is a very subtle and sweet joke by Swami Vivekananda. Of course, the Buddha never spoke of the Lord. But the Swami says, by the mercy of the Lord, the Buddha came and preached it to the masses, and the whole nation became Buddhists. Long after that, when atheists and agnostics destroyed the nation again, it was found out that Advaita was the only way to save India from materialism. And of course, that was the work of Adi Shankaracharya. Thus has Advaita twice saved India from materialism. Before the Buddha came, materialism had spread to a fearful extent, and it was of a most hideous kind, not like that of the present day, but of a far worse nature. I am a materialist in a certain sense because I believe there is only one. That is what the materialist wants you to believe. Only he calls it matter, and I call it God. The materialists admit that out of this matter, all hope and religion, the materialists admit that out of this matter and all hope and religion and everything has come. I say all these have come out of Brahman. But the materialism that prevailed before Buddha was of the sort of that crude sort of materialism, which taught eat, drink, and be merry. There is no God, soul, or heaven. Religion is a concoction of wicked priests. It taught the morality that so long as you live, you must try to live happily, eat though you have to borrow money for the food, and never mind about repaying it. That was the old materialism, and that kind of philosophy spread so much that even today it has got the name of popular philosophy. Buddha brought the Vedanta to light, gave it to the people, and saved India. 1,000 years after his death, a similar state of things again prevailed. the mobs, the masses, and various races had been converted to Buddhism, naturally the teachings of Buddha became in time degenerated because most of the people were very ignorant. Buddhism taught no God, no ruler of the universe, so gradually the masses brought their gods and devils and hobgoblins out again, and a tremendous hodgepodge was made of Buddhism in India. Again, materialism came to the fore, taking the form of license with the higher classes and superstition with the lower. Then Shankaracharya arose and once more revivified the Vedanta philosophy. He made it a rationalistic philosophy. In the Upanishads, the arguments are often very obscure. By what this Swami means by obscure is in the 19th century, all philosophy had become very language-based and linear. The language of the Upanishads is right brain dominant. It's suggestive rather than linear. Two aphorisms may follow one another and seem to have no connection. The arguments are often very obscure. The connection is an intuitive one, a right mind connection. That's why it seems to the 19th century audience he's talking to that they're obscure. By Buddha, the moral side of the philosophy was laid stress upon. That is to say, the karma yoga side. And by Shankaracharya, the intellectual side, the Jnana Yoga side. He worked out, rationalized, and placed before men the wonderful coherent system of Advaita. And you can see, if you read the work with if you read Adi Shankaracharya's workbook for Advaita Vedanta or Jnana Yoga, which is the Vivekachudamani, you'll see that he strove to make, rather than an Upanishadic argument, a left mind dominant linear argument. Though he says ultimately you have to transcend this, you have to, as Shankaracharya himself said, that illumination came, his mind fell into the ocean of consciousness and therein dissolved. So the left mind activity, of course, ceased.
Brother Shankara, it seems to me, I was reading something else by Swamiji where he talks about, it seems a lot like how we think about nature.
Yes.
The sense, he said that the Greeks believed that nature, how did he put it? He said that nature is God. Mm-hmm. But the Hindus believe that nature is a projection, part of the universe of God, of Brahman. So the nature exists for the education of the soul, which transcends ultimately the body, and which is part of nature. So I just thought what he's saying here about materialism and also Advaita, it reminded me of that.
Mm-hmm. Well, yes, nature, the divine, since there is only the divine, and there is this appearance of nature or time, space, and causation, there can have been no cause for it other than the divine. So if we think of ourselves as that divine presence, as the Swami asked us to do a bit earlier, then we did this. We created this. We being one, we seem to be many, but we are one. We created this so that we can experience it. As Sri Ramakrishna was fond of saying, it's mother's Leela. It is her play. It is her sport. That aspect of the divine that is seen as feminine, Kali, Shakti, nature. Swami Vivekananda sometimes used these words interchangeably.
Leela and the Nitya.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And we cannot have the beautiful without the ugly. But we want the beautiful. I mean, in the New York Times today, the New York Times online newsletter, they published a collection of great tenors singing arias, singing various songs from operas and other sources. Some of it is so achingly beautiful. Saraswati, the goddess in the form of Saraswati, music, intellect. Something in us wants this beauty. But we then become averse to the other side of the coin, the ugliness. Well, interestingly enough, the Saint Thomas Aquinas said, "You cannot be what God is not. You cannot be what God is not." So this is all the divine. But the Swami here in this talk is arguing that we must get free of our limitations, otherwise we can't really enjoy it. As long as we have this attachment and aversion, our enjoyment is limited. When we free ourselves from that, then our enjoyment is total, free, and unalloyed. Thank you, Divya.
So when we find ourselves attracted to the beautiful and averse to the ugly, and we see that, how are we supposed to respond? Because my feeling is that we're supposed to go beyond that.
Well, first, you've done the beautiful thing of witnessing that, Ramadas. You've noticed that I have both these responses. Well, of course you do, because you are within time, space, and causation, where there is duality. How to free ourselves? We free ourselves from limitation by identifying ourselves more and more with the unlimited, the infinite. We only discover the truth of that behind that witness awareness that you just spoke of. You notice that you're attracted to this and averse to that. Okay, that's the witness awareness. The witness is the face of the divine presence in our awareness. As we identify more and more with that which the witness is the face, of which the witness is the face, then we become less and less limited. And that's that same thing that I was talking about in a different context as sinking into silence. When you can quiet your mind and simply listen to the tenor sing, it's transcendently beautiful, and it awakens such feelings in you. But are you going to cling to that? No, the unlimited doesn't cling to anything. So, slowly and slowly, we learn to identify ourselves and know ourselves to be the unlimited rather than the limited. But it's a life's work. But the adventure is sure worth the effort, because the more free you become, the more joyous this life is. You also feel its tragedies more keenly as well. Until we go beyond all duality, we're going to. You can't experience the beautiful more keenly without experiencing the ugly more keenly as well. But neither of them is you. You are the witness, the experiencer.
Yes, I think that's why some people who practice sadhanas, they without correct guidance, they go insane because they are feeling things more keenly, and it does affect you.
There is something to that, yes, particularly if they're doing certain things that are that put too much stress on their nervous system. There are actually 5 nervous systems within us. When we overstress the psychic nervous system, pranamaya kosha, we run the risk of going insane. Anything else from anyone? This is lovely. This is exactly what we're to be doing. All right. Well, we'll call it quits for tonight then. We'll take it up next week from Materialism Prevails in Europe Today. And certainly not just in Europe today, then, but now. So, any final thought from anyone? All right. . Hari Om. Let there be peace in outer space. Let there be peace in the sky, on the earth, and in the waters. Let there be peace in the herbs, the plants, and the trees. May the gods be peaceful. May the whole universe be pervaded by peace. Let that infinite universal peace prevail throughout my being. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai, Durga Durga Durga. May you be safe, may you be healthy, may you be cheerful, may you have peace of mind. May you go forward in the divine presence's loving and protective embrace.
Thank you, Brother Shankara. Good night.
Thank you, Brother Shankara. Hari Om.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Hari Om. Hari Om.
Hari Om.